Really, I'm not concerned about anything.
Yes, sir, there she goes.
Hello and welcome to episode 190 of Section 138. We are in person in Bryson's car. We just got out of the Jays game. The Jays unfortunately losing, but opening weekend, a massive success for the Blue Jays. They take 2 of 3 against the Texas Rangers. It really had it all, except for good pitching. The Blue Jays had offense. They had a crazy opening day. The second game, also good. They come back from a 3-2 deficit and end up winning by 1 run. And then today, being the clunker of them all, they lead by, I think it was, 6-1?
Yep, 6-0.
And then they end up 6-0, and then they end up trailing, unfortunately, and they lose 12-6. But by and large, a crazy opening weekend. It's nice to have baseball back, and it's nice to be in person talking here in Bryson's car. I guess I don't have to ask how you guys are doing because I've talked to you for the last 3 hours. But yeah, what are your takeaways from this series? What are you making of the first Blue Jay series of the year?
Well, first of all, it was definitely an interesting weekend because of what you were saying, is that the starting pitching wasn't all there, but at the same time, the Jays took 2 out of 3, which is something that's pretty hard to do when your starting pitching's not there. So, I mean, obviously the highlight, I think, for all 3 of us who we were all here on Friday as well was the home opener. I thought that was definitely the highlight of the weekend. The atmosphere was electric. It was great seeing you guys again. And of course, I mean, that was probably the best game. I mean, the Jays looking like everything was going to fall apart after that, first inning from Jose Barrios. He didn't even finish the inning. And that, it just felt like it was going to be almost like a waste of a night. And then all of a sudden, the Jays started slowly chipping away, and they eventually tied the game from a Teoscar Hernandez 3-run home run. We know how good he's been throughout the weekend, minus today. So that happened, and of course, the Jays took the lead fast, and they really showed the team they were meant to be. So you moved, obviously, and then to the second game of the series, Kevin Gausman wasn't exactly sharp, but I thought he was still good enough. And of course, he had the one inning really where things kind of blew up on him. So that's pretty much what affected his line. So that looked all right too. And then of course today, we know what happened today. It just started off so well, kind of an opposite of what happened on Friday. I mean, it was pretty much the opposite ends of the table where the Jays get out to a good lead and then they lose it midway, and it just felt like from there they couldn't really get back going. The offense kind of shut down after that third inning. So overall, though, despite the starting pitching, which was pretty hard to do, despite I think you got like 8 innings combined from all 3 of Jose Barrios, Kevin Gausman, and Hyun-Jin Ryu, pretty successful starting the year 2-1. And of course, better than being below 500, because that's usually what we see from this team kind of in the opening series. So that's why it's kind of a little bit of a different story. But the hype is real. We've seen the atmosphere at Rogers Center throughout the weekend. It's going to be a really fun year after this first series of the year.
Yeah, I gotta say, it was quite entertaining. I think from just a fan presentation perspective, especially those new lights and the offense of this team. Like it's a dangerous lineup. And even though they did lose Sunday, they were up by quite a bit. They had a 4 spot in the first inning. Matt Chapman, the new guy, 3-run home run. That was amazing. But as happy as I am about this overall result, I am a little bit concerned because you cannot rely on scoring 10 runs or 6-7 runs a game and have that be still resulting in losing. Because I mean, at the end of the day, the Rangers they're not a terrible team. I know we kept debating this throughout the day, throughout the weekend. I think the thing that concerns me is the fact that despite taking this series and despite having an offensive showdown, you needed that offense. And going into a series against the New York Yankees where it's a 4-game series, I'm assuming you're going to see Garrett Cole. The Yankees obviously are a good team, and I projected them to really trail the Blue Jays all season. That needs to be looked into, and obviously this is very raw. We're literally 10 minutes after the final pitch, so
Yeah.
we don't even know what's up with Hyun-Jin Ryu. I know he got hit by a pitch. I think it was a hamstring, you guys were telling me earlier, so we'll have to see what happens with that. But Alec Manoa, we're going to need a big start out of him after Kevin Gausman. Not a terrible first pitch or first outing. Jose Barrios, we're going to see him for the second time, but from my perspective, a good series overall, but there definitely were some things to be concerned about. And the bullpen, I think the pitching overall, it's going to need to be worked on if this team wants to contend. And yeah, you won 2. You only need, I don't know, I mean, if you're going to win 92, 95 like the rest of the league's projecting, still good. Not a terrible start by any means, but it's a lot of things are, I think, going to need to be worked on if this team wants to contend.
You mentioned the bullpen. I got to be honest, I'm not even worried about the bullpen. I'm not, to be honest, even worried about the starting rotation, just because, I mean, yes, that was obviously the big talking point from this series, and that was a big struggle of the Blue Jays in the 3 games. As we mentioned, we saw Jose Barrios only get 1 out in the opener. Kevin Gausman, better, not totally what we know he can do. We know what he's capable of, but we saw flashes of brilliance there. We saw the splitter really working for him there. And then even Ryu, we saw what he can do in the early innings. He fell apart later there, and obviously that's a concern. And knowing what we saw from Ryu last year, that's a concern with him. But by and large, it's small sample size. Like, the pitching is not a concern. From what we think we know so far, at least, it's going to bounce back. It's going to be somewhat steady throughout the entire season. I don't think that's a concern. Really, I'm not concerned about anything coming out of this series. It's frustrating to see the rotation struggle, but I'm really not concerned about it. You look at the Texas lineup, as bad as we might think Texas is overall, they don't have pitching, obviously. They have a really good starting lineup. They have Marcus Semien and Corey Seager, and that's really all you need to know. They have Brad Miller as well. They have Adolis Garcia as well. They have a bunch of guys who are really, really good hitters. So they're a really strong team offensively. So when you look at it from that perspective, and the fact that this is 3 games, you have the opening day jitters with Jose Barrios. You have Kevin Gausman first start with a new team, and he only gives up 3 runs. And then you have Hyun-Jin Ryu, who we don't totally know what we're getting from him this year. But I think by and large, you can be pretty happy with what happened this weekend. And I don't think any of us are complaining. I don't think any Blue Jay fan is complaining about what happened. And long term, I don't think there's really any concerns.
No, not at all. I mean, it's just, I don't know if, there we go. So sorry, we're just first in-person podcast. But yeah, I just think as much as we're not concerned, especially Friday, it was disappointing. Like, Jose Barrios, fresh off the contract, fresh off of being named that opening day starter, you just felt he was trying to do way too much. And of course, the Jays starting off how they did that game, it obviously was I think it was 4-0 before they picked up a bat. So that's the only thing is I'm not concerned about, but it was definitely disappointing because of that. And of course, Kevin Gausman, he had good moments with the splitter, Mark. You were talking about it. You were here on the Saturday as well. So as much as he wasn't sharp overall, and we know he can be a lot better from what we've seen last year and of course throughout the past, it was still definitely interesting to see him pitch pretty well. I mean, again, not too sharp, but he's going to be better than that. And of course, Hyun-Jin Ryu, I think out of those 2 guys, probably the biggest concern, even if there's a little bit overall just because of that. We know, Mark, you said it. I mean, there's kind of similarities to last year where he'd have a good start and then there would be that blow-up inning where he completely fell off the rails on all aspects. I think today was his fastball, which was really struggling. So he's got to figure it out. I know he was diagnosed with a hamstring contusion, so we'll see if he misses any time. But now, going into New York in a 4-game series, you're going to see the other 2 guys, and Alec Manoa, Jacob, you touched on it, and of course, Yusei Kikuchi. So that's going to be interesting to see. And of course, the Yankees and Red Sox coming off a pretty interesting series themselves. I think the Yankees started off 2-0. We'll see how they do today. So it's going to be a really, really good series in the Bronx, and that's really what I'm excited to see. But once the starting pitching gets better and the offense pretty much continues to play the way they have been, it's going to be a pretty good team because, of course, as much as they finished this weekend 2-1, it wasn't exactly a finished product of their full potential. And the bullpen really wasn't that bad, in my opinion, either. I mean, you look at today, especially on the Sunday, it kind of felt like they were just going to their bubble guys in terms of Trent Thornton and, of course, Taylor Saucedo, 2 guys who, if you make the argument, if Nate Pearson and Ryan Borucki are both healthy, 2 guys that probably aren't on this bullpen right now. So other than that, throughout the rest of the weekend, I thought we had really good appearances, of course, from Jordan Romano. He came out both games, and of course, what a light show for his entrance when he comes out. 2 saves already to start the year, and of course, other guys as well. Jimmy Garcia, one of the biggest additions for the bullpen. I thought he had a good weekend as well. So despite last year, and I guess in a difference from last year, the bullpen starting off the season relatively well is definitely interesting, and it's definitely different from last year. So that's also why I'm not too concerned. And the starting pitching, we all know it's going to be better than this. I mean, pretty unsustainable for somebody like Jose Barrios to get 1 out. So we all know that's going to change. So that's why I'm also excited to see how he bounces back on Wednesday. But yeah, overall, a really fun series, and you can definitely feel the buzz now. We've talked about how we're predicting all this and all that, but we finally saw it throughout this weekend at Rogers Center, which is why my excitement has definitely jumped to another level for sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's important to note about the bullpen is it covered a lot of ground in general, but probably more ground that you want it to actually cover because, with Barrios, obviously a third of an inning, pretty much the entire game, almost the entire game was covered by them. And even today on Sunday, Ryu was knocked out after 3 1/3. So you're kind of seeing more of the eating up innings guys. We saw Ross Stripling for a couple innings. He threw only 9 pitches in the first game. You probably see him in a couple innings in your normal situations. But to say that the bullpen's maybe subpar because the guys that, first of all, like you mentioned, Saucedo Trent Thornton. I don't know if we're necessarily expecting them to eat up a lot of innings on a healthy roster. So from that perspective, I'm not overly concerned. I think it's fair to say that Jordan Romano is a lock for that ninth inning, and he doesn't look like he's ever going to crack under pressure. Knock on wood. But from that perspective, I'm not necessarily concerned. I think it's just the effects and the after effects of the starting rotation not eating up enough innings, not necessarily doing as well as you expect, kind of trickled down to the bullpen, who already, we talked about last year how the bullpen depth was tested probably beyond its limits. It's already, I think, reaching that point, even with the core four from last year. I don't even remember. I don't think we saw Trevor Richards. We didn't see him today. I don't think we saw him at all this series unless it was a small inning or a small
he had
outing.
I think we had one appearance.
Oh, okay, so yeah, a little bit of an appearance out of him, but as the season goes on, as the settlement or as guys settle in, it will be a lot better. And I think it's I know in Toronto a lot of times the media, the fans, everyone likes to overreact over every type of game, to be completely honest, but 159 games or 100 whatever it is, I'm not too great at math, but 159 games left. 159 games left. We've still got a lot of time, got a lot of ground to make up, and really, it's not even May. It's not even close to the middle of April. We have a lot of time for things to get a lot better. Kevin Gausman, he's going to be here for 5 years. Obviously, we talk about guys like Barrios, Manoa. They're here for a long time, and are they bound to have bad starts? Absolutely. Is it ideal to have it on opening day? Not really, but it's going to get a lot better from here. And if your offense, and as I said in the start, you don't want your offense to have to carry, but if it can, combine, the home opener, combine pretty much every game with a good starting pitcher or good outing from your pitching staff, and this is easily a 100-win season from this team with that type of offense and that type of pitching. So exciting opening weekend. Now we see the team go to New York. I think they have like a few back-to-back where they go home road for a couple series in a row, but we'll see them in New York. We'll see what they can do. A nice AL East showdown, but yeah, it's overall a very exciting series, and I can't wait to see where the rest of the season goes.
Yeah, just one final note on the pitching. Like you said, like in a normal series, in an ideal series, we might expect, maybe 9 or 10 innings from the bullpen total. We got pretty much that in the first game with Jose Barrios being out after 1 out. So, yeah, in a normal situation, you're not going to be at the depth of which you have to go to Trent Thornton, you have to go to Taylor Saucedo, you have to go to those guys. Obviously, every once in a while you will in a certain game where those guys don't hold up to pressure. The starters get out early like we saw in this series. But in an ideal world, you're not going to have to rely on those guys, and not having that depth will be a problem. So, yeah, I think by and large we can all say we're not concerned about the pitching. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the other standout performances. I think the one guy that everyone's talking about right now is Santiago Espinal. He started the season, not even in the starting lineup. It seems like the Blue Jays' plans as of right now are to go with a platoon with him and Vigil starting against right-handed pitchers, Espinal starting against left-handed pitchers. And then as the game progressed on Friday, we saw Biggio come out, Espinal come in. Same thing happened on Saturday when the Blue Jays put Espinal in to face a left-handed pitcher. And then in today's game on Sunday, we saw Espinal starting against a right-handed pitcher. And then later in the game, we saw Kevin Biggio pinch hit, still against a right-handed pitcher. So, I mean, our idea of what they're planning to do is for them to have a platoon with those two guys, but it seems like the plans are shifting a little bit already, and a lot of people are impressed with what Santiago Espinal was able to do at the plate.
Absolutely, and when he came out on Friday night, obviously that was one of the energy boosters they needed, and he had a really clutch hit, which was one of the first runs that got them back into the game. So this was pretty much coming into the season. We expected this platoon. I think, Mark, you said almost a 60-40. I said 50-50. Jacob, I know you're the highest out of all three of us on Santiago Espinal, so there you go on that one. But, I mean, it's interesting because of what you were saying today of how he did start against the right-handed pitchers. So clearly they were riding with the hotter hand today in particular, but in Game 1 and Game 2, we clearly saw what they were doing with the matchups, and of course Kevin Biggio, who didn't have exactly a terrific first couple of games, which is also the reason why Espinal played the third game, which was today. So it's going to be just, I think, a back and forth shuffle unless Santiago Espinal continues to play like this and sustain this. He's going to overtake Kevin Biggio throughout the year at some point if this continues. But if Kevin Biggio, starts to play better and after these first 3 games, then it's going to remain a platoon. So it's just something that I think they're going to kind of monitor day by day, which is completely fair, of course. And of course, it just coming into the season, it's something that we were always looking at, and it was pretty much something we were looking at last year because we were all anticipating Marcus Semien to depart at the end of the year. So that's why, as much as it doesn't surprise us to see how they've been fitting into the lineup, Espinal's production at the plate in particular has definitely been surprising. It's definitely been eye-catching because of that. And we know the weight he gained throughout the year. He added some muscle to himself, and of course that's helped him. And I mean, you've seen the difference already. And again, going back to that first game, he had a double into the gap, which was a really hard hit ball. And of course, coming off the bench again on Saturday, he had the same thing. So not only is he just playing well off the bench, he's hitting solid baseball, and he's having really good contact at the plate. And of course, we know that he's a really good fielder. And Kevin Biggio actually had a couple fumbles at second base. So clearly after the first series, it definitely lies in favor of Espinal. And of course, there's a chance that could change throughout the year. But right now, he's definitely been the guy that's pretty much taken advantage of the slim opportunities that he had, because he started only today, which is his only start of the year. He came off the bench Friday and Saturday in Game 2. And Game 1 and Game 2. So that's what we've kind of been seeing. So I'm fine with it. I really am fine with it. And if it goes to a point where they decide to choose one guy over the other, I think one of those guys has to earn that spot. And I think right now Espinal is definitely on the right track to do so. So we'll see how Kevin Biggio responds. But at the end of the day, in an ideal world, we need both guys going at the same time to make this team even better. So hopefully Biggio, starts to pick it up a little bit this week, because Espinal's really gotten off to a really fast start.
Yeah, I'll be honest. As much as I like Kevin Biggio and as much as I like the story of him, Bichette, Guerrero all coming up together, I think Charlie Montoyo and everybody involved is going to have to make a tough decision, because at some point, I know he's a left-handed bat, and I know the Blue Jays, other than him, it's Raymel Tapia, and I don't even know if there's any more, but maybe some in I think the minors and whatnot. But
Bradley Zimmer now too.
Oh, Bradley, yes, so Bradley Zimmer. So they have some options, but Kevin Biggio is definitely valuable from that perspective. But at some point, if Espinal's outplaying you defensively and now offensively, I hate to say it, but I think Kevin Biggio's kind of got to earn his spot back. And you don't want to say something like that. You don't want to see something like that. Obviously, he was part of that awful 2019 team, part of the rebuild. He came back. He obviously played a lot 2020. Last season, as much as I'm willing to call it a write-off for him, and I am, because obviously he was plagued by injuries, it's at the point now where you need offensive and defensive performance. And we've talked pretty much all offseason, all last season, really going into this season, how the Blue Jays are not in a we'll see what happens for next season. They're in a win now mode, and that's why they go out get Kevin Gausman. They go out trade for Matt Chapman and extend him for 2 more years, or sign him to a 2-year contract to bring him back next season. So if you're Kevin Biggio, you kind of are auditioning for a role at this point. And maybe I'm completely wrong on that, but I think at some point it's got to be Espinal's position really to just for the taking until he proves that he can't. And I'm not saying that means he's in there the entire game. Obviously, you can take him out and shift based off of matchups and whatnot. And we saw kind of a reverse of that today where Biggio came off the bench. But at some point, I think we're going to have to see a starting second baseman, if that makes sense. And if that's Santiago Espinal, who's career .298 hitter, I know it's a bit of 2020, a lot of 2021, but a career hitter that is significantly better regardless of the sample size, which is probably a relatively similar sample size to Biggio. But if you have a hitter that is outperforming somebody, and I'm not saying he's a power hitter, but outperforming in terms of just getting on, driving in runs when need be, I think that Santiago Espinal is kind of quietly emerging as a sleeper on this team. And at the end of the day, I think it was Ryan Goins. This was maybe 5-6 years ago, but Ryan Goins, it was him and Devin Travis kind of competing for that second baseman role, and Goins said that he wanted to make the job, or the decision for the second baseman job, as difficult as possible. And Santiago Espinal is doing that right now. And I think, maybe you guys have a different perspective. I know I was very high on him on the predictions episode, but I think it's Espinal's job. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes all 4 starts, at least in that New York series, or at least 3 of the 4. So it'll be interesting to see how they shift this. Is it a platoon, or is this really, one person's job really for the taking?
Yeah, you guys know that I'm a little bit higher on Kevin Biggio than both of you. I like him, but I do think the time is running out Like, I think he's a high potential guy. He won MVP in Double-A in that 2018 season when we saw Vlad and Bo have their incredible minor league seasons as well. He came up right after Vladdy. He put up the numbers in 2020. But I think the time is running out for him to prove it. I think Santiago Espinal is here. Santiago Espinal is, as of right now, the better option for the Blue Jays to play. And Kevin Biggio has to prove that he can be in there every day at second base and be a viable guy and provide plus value for the Blue Jays. Because right now, Santiago Espinal is doing that. So, and I know like last year there was the excuses of the neck stuff and all those injuries that he was dealing with. And, you know, he wasn't totally healthy all year. I think this season, there's no longer that excuse. So if he's not able to put up those numbers and that production, sooner or later, Santiago Espinal is going to be that guy. And again, I've said this before, I don't think Santiago Espinal is as good as he is right now or as good as he was towards the end of last season when he was really, really hot. He's going to be someone who runs hot and cold. That's anyone in baseball, but especially a guy who's not playing every day. So I don't know if we can totally buy in with the performance that Santiago Espinal has put up so far. I know, Jacob, you would think otherwise. You're totally buying into what he's done. But again, I think bottom line, even if Santiago Espinal isn't this good day in and day out, the Blue Jays or Kevin Biggio is running out of time to prove that he deserves that playing time. And soon we might end up in a situation where Espinal is starting every day. I don't think it's going to be tomorrow. I don't think it's going to be the series against the Yankees. I think we might see it further down the line. Whether it's against the Red Sox have 2 series, I think, this month against the Blue Jays. So maybe towards the end of the month, we start to see that playing time shift and the Blue Jays make a full commitment towards Espinal starting and Biggio on the bench if that's how they continue to play. Let's talk more about Friday's game.
Of course.
Because that was a fun one. All 3 of us were there in person, and we would not have missed it for the world because it was an incredible game. Bryson, you said it was the best home opener you've ever been to. I think for Jacob and I, it's the best game we've ever been to in person, or at least the best atmosphere. Blue Jays down 7-0. They come all the way back. They tie it on a Teoscar Hernandez 3-run bomb. And then the Rangers take another lead. They make it 8-7. The Blue Jays score again. This time Teoscar Hernandez coming all the way home. There's a video review at the plate, on the play at the plate. He's originally called out. The Blue Jays challenge it. Teoscar Hernandez is clearly safe on replay, and I think this was my favorite moment from the whole night. All the fans cheering safe and chanting safe. And then this year we have the new umpire announcements where they're mic'd up and they announce the results to the crowd. And when that was announced, I know we've all seen the highlight video and we were all there in person. It is the most insane reaction I've ever seen for a video replay. And to just think that that's opening day, and I know the atmosphere for the rest of the weekend wasn't quite the same. I was there Saturday. We were all here Sunday. It wasn't quite the same. There wasn't that type of energy. But you can see the potential of what this stadium can be and what this fan base can be. And we know what it is from 2015 and 2016, but it's so exciting to see that return and just what an insane game on Friday. And what a way to start one of 162. We're in for the long haul this season, whatever this season may hold. But just to see that's the way things kick off, and that the Blue Jays have the potential to come back from 7-0, are never going to quit, are able to get the crowd behind them like that and create such an electric atmosphere. It was crazy. It was a crazy game, and it was so much fun to be at. And I think that's going to be, at the end of the season, we're going to do our end of season awards. I think that's probably going to be one of the top games on the list just because of how special it was in so many different degrees. Outside of baseball, this is the first game the Blue Jays have back at home, the first home opener since 2019, the first sold-out game at the Rogers Center since the beginning of the 2018 season. It's a special moment for baseball in Toronto, special moment for sports in Toronto, and to see them celebrate it in such a way, Barrios aside, everything else being so special, it was just an awesome game.
Yeah, it really was, and I think the biggest, takeaway that I have and what I was most impressed about was that when it was 7-0, you felt obviously the atmosphere got sucked out of the building, which is obviously expected in a game like that. But for the atmosphere to return and to even get louder than it was in the first inning at some point in the middle innings, that I found was the most interesting and the most, standout for me because of that. Because we know how fast the Jays really got back into it. It just felt at first it was going to be a really long night. And then, of course, around, I think, the second or third, that's when they just started getting base hits. And then that's when I pretty much felt the game slowly turn. Now, I wasn't really necessarily predicting a comeback at that point, but you definitely felt the Jays were starting to get into the game. And of course, obviously, the next inning when they tied it, that was pretty much obviously when that happened. So that's why you felt the game turn, and they definitely came up with that, and they definitely produced. So the start to the movie was wild, first of all. So, but yeah, I mean, just the atmosphere itself, the lights going off when there was a home run, just everything about Friday was pretty much exciting, and it was a great way to tee up the start of the season, other than Barrios, like you were talking about, Mark. So hopefully he can figure things out for a start on Wednesday. But that start on Friday, it's definitely up there in terms of my best games that I've been to. Best home opener, yes. And of course, aside from the wild card game in 2016, you can really make an argument that it's up there for one of the second best games that I've been to. But yeah, the atmosphere for the people who were there, it just is just because also 2018 was the last sellout, like you were talking about, Mark. It's weird because it was just bizarre to see the crowd that big, even in the pregame intros. So that's another thing I kind of took away from. I know, there's a giveaway going on. There's a bobblehead day on the Saturday. So overall, a great weekend, a great scene at Rogers Center. But yeah, that Friday game, it's something that we're going to look back on at the end of the year and really remember of how great it was to start the season like that. So we've seen it in April, and it kind of leads things the way in terms of what is it going to look like in October. And that's the really one thing that I can't even begin to imagine what it will look like. But that video replay, I know we didn't really talk about it. It was kind of a quiet addition that they added this year. That was insane. Chanting safe, safe, safe. And then, of course, the umpire making an announcement like you're watching a football game or like watching a hockey game. It's bizarre to see in baseball, but it totally fits. And I think also, the umpires definitely, I think they got rid of those headsets too. So they really made the technology modern when they're on the video replay room. So baseball finally did a really good job with the scoring system for review. And I'm really happy that the umpire making those announcements, it really does fit into the game, because when you first thought of it, you didn't really know how to feel about it. But with the atmosphere on Friday, it definitely felt great. And of course, that comeback, 7-0. I mean, I don't know why we even doubted this team. So I mean, at first it didn't feel like that was going to happen, but it eventually did happen. And of course, the Jays didn't look back from there.
Yeah, just to jump in here, you mentioned how strange it was to have the full crowd there. I think the Blue Jays were also a little bit thrown off by the full crowd, because we were there, and I mean, the concourses were packed, obviously, as you would expect, but we saw, or at least I saw, multiple concession stands that were refilling on beer at multiple occasions throughout the game. And the lines, we were near the flight deck, the lines at the flight deck to get beer at the two concession stands there were insane. They were wrapping practically around out of the flight deck into the normal concourse area, which is crazy. And I know it's a little bit different because half the flight deck was shut down for a private event. But yeah, that was just, I think the Blue Jays were also surprised. They were a little bit thrown off by how busy it was.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to say before we move on, Section 205, that safe chant was because of us. That that was, I'll be honest, like, I think one of the things, I just enjoyed how loud it was. And yeah, baseball at times can sound a little boring to the average person, how it's, it can get a little quiet, but that game, it felt as if you were at a concert, and it felt as if, baseball was modern again, or modern, finally. And I think the best part is the Blue Jays won that game, because I think the last thing you want is to have the first full crowd. It almost reminds me of I think the home opener ish against the Royals, where they win. It's like the Cinderella story. It's the perfect moment. You win. Everybody's finally there for the first time in a long time. I think it was. I mean, we all went to games last year, but this is the first full house, the first home opener I think that I've ever been to. It's definitely the best game I've ever been to. So just overall, it was, I guess the best way to put it, and this is going to sound really cheesy, but it almost felt magical, in the sense that they were down before they even had a double digit out, or 2 outs, really. Like, it was brutal basically before it even started, and they finally come back. And I think one thing that was interesting, we were kind of sitting in an area where we didn't get the full outfield, or like the full view of every single thing. Like, we had a perfect view. I'm not going to complain necessarily about that, but the Teoscar Hernandez home run, we kind of gauged our reaction based off of what the crowd did. So I was like, okay, should I react? Should I not? And I think that was just awesome. It was just everyone coming together. Shout out to the 2015 slogan, but it was an amazing game. And honestly, I don't think anything will ever top it. I mean, we'll see. I think it's the Oakland A's coming back towards the end of the week. that'll definitely be an interesting series. I know it'll be a little bit of a reunion for Matt Chapman, but very, very entertaining weekend. And I think if you're pretty much any Blue Jay that is on a relatively near expiring contract, then you're thinking this is a team that I think I want to stay with. And if you're Kevin Gausman, you're Jose Barrios, you're one of these, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, who are on long-ish deals, but with those guys, they're starting to get to arbitration. If you're one of these guys, you're thinking, dang, how do I stay here and how do I be a part of this? Because a sellout crowd, first sellout, as we mentioned, multiple years ago, or since that time, it's going to be, I think eventually we're going to all need to go see hearing doctors after that, because it's very good. It's very entertaining, and I think that it only can get better from here, from this team's perspective. And they're good. They're young, they're good, they have control. The fans are behind them, the country's behind them. I know we saw a tweet just before I wrap it up from, I think it was Calgary, a lot of people coming to Toronto for the game as of Friday morning. Like, if you're one of these players, I as much as a fan, I never want to go cheer for another team. I would never want to play for another team, let alone, if I was one of these players. So it's just, it's great. And I think especially with the review, it definitely brings, it's not like the biggest change, but it's a change that's, I think, very welcome to a lot of other fans.
Yeah, and when we talk about baseball having to grow, it's a very subtle change, but it does improve a lot from the fan perspective. So you mentioned the noise. I think part of that, I think they redid the sound system. If I'm not mistaken. It's not like a big difference, but you can definitely tell it's a lot louder in there. And, Friday, the fans were insane, obviously, not taking anything away from that. But I think Saturday and Sunday, both games, I noticed that it seemed a lot louder than it had been previous years. Like, conversations that you could have before, now, while there's music playing or sound effects playing, you cannot have the same conversations, which, there's a give and take to that. But, the last thing I want to talk about is a new hashtag. Hashtag next level. We talked about this before. I'm not the biggest fan. I think it's a bit cheesy. I know all the hashtags are cheesy. And I know ones from previous years haven't really stuck. Like Blue Grit, hashtag We Are Blue Jays. Neither of those seem to really stick. Hashtag Let's Rise, I don't think was a big sticking point as well. But you go back, obviously, to the hashtag Come Together, hashtag Our Moment. Those ones were big hashtags. I think Let's Rise, I think they're leaning into it a little bit more than they have previous hashtags. Or, excuse me, Next Level. They're leaning into it a little bit more. And I think because of that, the weakness of it is showing, because they have it on the branding everywhere and they talk about it a lot. They're talking, on the loudspeaker of, you ready to take the Blue Jays to the next level? And when they're tweeting video highlights, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. just took it to the next level. And it's kind of cringy. I'm not a huge fan of it. I get what they're going for after 2021. This is the Blue Jays stepping it up and becoming that championship team that we've always dreamed about. But yeah, I'm not totally sold on it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think of it on the Friday just because of everything that was going on. But after that, I think yesterday was when I really was like, oh, yeah, this is the new hashtag. So, and of course, it's been trending all over Canada, I think, top on Twitter throughout the entire weekend. So it's kind of hard to miss. But yeah, obviously, I don't mind it. I'm definitely a little bit more on board with it than you are, but still not one of their best, obviously. Jacob, you said it earlier. I think the best one that they did have was Come Together, which is in 2015. And the following year, I thought they did really well with Our Moment. But honestly, past 2017, like 18, 19, 20, I completely forgot what those hashtags were until you brought it up. So we're definitely going to remember Next Level. I mean, that's something you can't really get out of your mind now. And I guess it's only fitting because, like you were saying, Next Level for a team who, a young team, stepping stones for a team that missed out of the playoffs by one game. The next level, obviously, the playoffs and a lot what people are talking about, the AL East, and what Jake was been talking about before, the World Series. So it makes sense, but yeah, I mean, they're definitely overusing it, but maybe it's an opening weekend thing. Maybe they back off of it a little bit, but at the end of the day, as much as you could find it cringy, it doesn't bother me too much. It's just, again, it's hard to not notice it, so that's why. But if I had to give my rankings, I would say 2015 and 2016 were definitely 1 and 2 for me in terms of those hashtags. And I know I was lying a little bit before, but Blue Grid I do remember from last year, but the Let's Rise one I completely forgot about. So that's one I think was 2017 or 18. But yeah, it's just, other than those, I think the sticking points were 2015, 2016. And perhaps this year, if all goes well, it's going to be easy to remember this one as well. So, Jacob, I'll let you share your thoughts, and I hope you have some sort of joke for us on this.
So if we were remote, I'd probably have a joke, but I don't know if I can.
Can't think of it on the spot.
Yeah,
Can't do live stand-up.
not right now at least. But I think the hashtag it's okay. I mean, I've kind of come to accept that there's going to be a new one every year, and I get why.
Yeah, 1 out of 10. What do you give it?
I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 10. It's okay, 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. It's not bad. I understand taking it to the next level, but it almost reminds me of when that like out of touch person tries to come in with the younger generation. It's like, yeah guys, it's lit or something like that. But you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I know what you mean.
it's not terrible, but
I'm
it's
clipping that. I'm cutting that out. We're not going
It's-
to give it that.
No.
what I can't put it.
No.
No, we're keeping that.
Oh, keep it. Okay.
Yeah, we're rolling.
Oh dang. Okay. Like it's not awful, but it could be better. I know it's the reaction here. It shows how bad my analogy was. But I like you mentioned come together. I said that I thought what is it? Maybe 7 years later, still think that's their best hashtag, and it's. I think what's good about it is it's like you can make any word relative to the Blue Jays, and obviously on Twitter you can put the logo beside it. But I think what was good about come together is kind of the way they stylized it, where it was come and then TO with like the T and the O were capitalized, and the and like the period in the middle, so it was like T.O like Toronto. It was obviously trying to say it was, we're coming together for Toronto, and that's what I liked about it. Whereas with Next Level, it's like it's okay, like I get it. We're probably gonna see a new one next year, but it's not my favorite. But I feel like it's just something that we're gonna see every year. But yeah, I would like to see, and I know this is not gonna happen, but I would maybe like to see them stay with one, almost like I'm pretty sure the Raptors, we the North, or what is the Leafs forever now, I think, something like that, where it's like you automatically associate that with the team. I think that would be nice. But from a marketing perspective, it definitely is used a lot.
It's fresh.
It's fresh, and I think as the season goes on, I think we'll kind of not react to it as much. We'll be like, yeah, whatever, it's another Blue Jays commercial. But I think maybe the best option is to stay with one, and we'll see where I think that goes. I don't think that's likely, but something like Come Together, or even We Are Blue Jays. I don't even mind that. Like I think something like that, where it clearly represents the team, like something related to the team that you want to keep in the back of people's minds.
I got to be honest. I think if I'm if I'm ranking these, We Are Blue Jays is below Next Level. I think it's like, what does it mean? Like, what does We Are Blue Jays like?
This is us.
Thank you, Jacob. I don't know what it means. Like, I don't know. To me, it means nothing. We are blue. Like, yeah, you're the Blue Jays. We get it. That's why we're watching these games. So yeah, to me, that's like an all-time low. But yeah, Next Level, I'm not a big fan. But I think I'm right around where you are, probably 5 out of 10. But yeah, I mean, semantics aside, branding aside, an incredible weekend. Do you guys have any final thoughts about what happened with the Blue Jays this weekend, individual performances we saw, overall takeaways that we can look at, and to look forward to the Yankees?
Yeah, I guess final takeaways. Well, first of all, I love the new Jumbotron. I know we didn't really talk about that. We only kind of talk about it when it was under renovation, so I love that. I love the new graphics they're using. But in terms of individual, I mean, for us, we got to see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Take a home run, George Springer, Matt Chapman, so many names. Danny Jansen a couple times. Teoscar Hernandez definitely the highlight for me throughout this weekend. Minus today, I know he had a tough day at the plate. So those, in terms of that, because of how cool those moments were, and especially on Friday in particular, no matter who it was hitting a home run, the building pretty much popped out of the roof, and I'm sure the camera was almost shaking too on TV. So all of that, on a broadcasting note, it's good to see Buck Martinez back at Rogers Center in person with Dan Shulman. It just feels like, everything's kind of getting back to normal, especially the fact that we saw opening day in Toronto. It was really good to see Jamie Campbell, to see the fight he has ahead of him, and of course him showing up this weekend and throughout the year. It was just really good to see him, of course, and that he's in good spirits. So overall, I just thought this weekend was really good from the on-field to going around the stadium to the atmosphere to the marketing besides the hashtag. It just everything about it too. Rogers Center I thought did really well too. I mean, the lighting again, I'll touch on it one more time, really cool because it's something that I kind of forgot about, but I remember reading about it and kind of figuring out that they redid the LED lights, and the fact to just turn off the lights and the blue lights just showed up was definitely something that kind of shocked me. Overall, really, really good weekend. So can't wait for this week in New York. I'm actually really excited for that because Jays and Yankees series are always entertaining, but the fact that the Yankees also have gotten off to a good start, it's going to be interesting. And of course, I'm really kind of interested to see how Jose Barrios bounced back on Wednesday. And Alec Manoa, I mean, that's the guy that we haven't seen yet. One of the guys that a lot of people are talking about in terms of a breakout player this year, and I know none of us really had him on the top of the list, but he's definitely up there in contention. Really, intrigued to see how he does because the starting pitching overall throughout the first 3 days hasn't been exactly great. So maybe the first start comes from him. And of course, you're always interested to see the new guy, and that'll be Yusei Kikuchi on Tuesday. So we'll see what happens with that. So I'll give it to you, Jacob.
I got to be honest. Baseball is baseball. It was entertaining. All three of all three of the games were, or I mean, I wasn't at the second one, but the games that I was at, the game that I was able to watch, it's Blue Jays. You expect it. You expect that type of good performance. But I think the biggest thing for me is just the fact that I don't remember which one of you that said it, but it just feels as if it's normal. You can go to the Rogers Center. You're not. Like, I know there are restrictions. You can't necessarily go and stand at an area that's not your seat or whatever. But you can just go in and watch it as if it was 2019, just with a better team. And to me, that's the thing that I'm most excited about. And I'm excited to just see how the rest of the season goes on. I'm glad nobody mentioned the pregame antics on Friday, where I got lost a little bit. We're not probably not going to touch on that.
Well, now that you mentioned it.
Thank God. But I think the biggest thing for me is it felt as if it was a normal season, and this team it's gonna be really good, and I just can't wait to see where this season takes place or where this team goes to.
Yeah, now that you mentioned it, Jacob got lost on Friday. We were trying to meet before the game, and he said he was in Union at the staircase that goes up to track 10 and 11. There's 3 staircases that go up to track 10 and 11. I walked all around all 3 of them. He was nowhere to be found. I said, meet me out of the York Street Tunnel. He was nowhere to be found. I said, meet me at York and Bremner. He was nowhere to be found. So I said, meet me at the Rogers Center. And it took him about 15 minutes to find it. So,
Can't miss that.
do you want to defend yourself?
Your Honor, let me clarify. So basically, oh man, how do I say this without looking like a fool? Basically, I get to Union Station and you tell me to go to York, and I'm looking at the signs. York is nowhere to be found. I go on maps. York is nowhere to be found. I don't live in Toronto, so I don't.
Clearly not. No.
I don't have it like in the back of my mind, or like on the back of my I don't know it like the back of my hand. So basically, I went on a little bit of an adventure. I eventually found you guys. We eventually watched the game, but I'm gonna blame that one on Apple Maps. That's my defense case. We eventually found each other though.
Let everyone know, I also don't live in Toronto. I live in Ottawa. I didn't get lost. Okay, we'll wrap the podcast up there. Thank you to everyone who listened or watched this episode. Very exciting, us being back in person. We're in a steaming hot car, and the windows are fogging up, so we're happy to get out of here. But what an opening weekend it was, and we're looking forward to the upcoming days with the Blue Jays at Yankee Stadium. As always, you can find our podcast on Patreon. That's patreon.com/section138pod. You can find us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at section138pod. And as always, if you enjoy our podcast, you can support us by going to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and giving us a rating and review, which just helps spread the word about what we're doing here. So we will be back on Thursday evening or Friday with another podcast. It will not be in person, but we are looking forward to what comes next for the Blue Jays. Catch you then.